By staying in this meeting, you consent to being live streamed. Anyone with access to the live stream can watch or share with others. Just so yins all know, as we say in Pittsburgh. Hey, Tony, how are you? Good to see you. I had fun working on your presentation today, and I'm going to change your name to Tony. There we go, and get your last name. And we're going to start out with the Airborne. After one brief announcement, we're going to start out talking about the Airborne, Tony. So I look forward to going through some pictures. I tried to find pictures that match your steps through training. Oh, Kim is here too. I see Kim. Good. This is good. All right, we are what? August 23rd, 6:59. Hello. I haven't said hello to Facebook and YouTube. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. Connor, you have your hand up? Or did I just
No, Mr. Freeman has told me a whole bunch of stories. I could tell you some of them. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And if
some of them are, because
absolutely. We're going to go live. We're going to bring everybody in from the waiting room in a minute. And if I cut you off at all tonight, it's just because it's just an issue of time. That's all. But I will go to you after Tony is done presenting on Airborne. All right.
Yeah, and I think we're just about ready to get started. So I'll start letting people into the room.
Let's hit it.
Let it rip.
Hi, Todd.
Hey, how you doing, Becky? You're with us.
I'm trying to get my mom on here.
Oh, we got to get your mom on here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to VBC Happy Hour. I am Todd DiPastino. I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club and normally the host of our VBC Happy Hour, which is on Monday evenings. We have been doing these programs online since March of 2020. We also just started our first in-person event, which was on Saturday. Unfortunately, I was visiting my brother in Montana at the time and I couldn't be there, but our program director, Sean Hall, you took care of it. How did it go on Saturday, Sean?
Fabulous. We had a great time. Good breakfast, good conversation, met some new people, invited some new friends into the VBC family, talked with Guy Prestia, had a really wonderful time there. It was nice to be back to in person.
And it was, I think we had Calvin Goss, Warren Goss, and Guy Prestia, 3 World War II veterans at the event. And, I know this is, we're in another odd time with COVID-19. We don't know how if we'll be able to continue to do the in-person events that we have scheduled for this fall, but we're going to try it out and we're going to keep on doing these online events also. And if you remember last week, we had this event on the National Airborne Day, Airborne Birthday, the day, August 16th, 1940, when the parachute test platoon first did their first jump. And we were going to do the whole program around Airborne, but then we were preempted by the news coming out of Afghanistan a week ago. And boy, what a conversation that was, mainly with Vietnam veterans, but also with others, including some veterans from Afghanistan, from Afghanistan itself. And, this thing isn't going away. And I think we all have a week to process what's been happening there. And we thought that we would continue that conversation today. We have Hugh Pham, who served in Afghanistan. Hello, Hugh, and who is also working, he's an Army intelligence officer, and he's also working on a documentary about the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, the South Vietnamese Army. And he's very familiar with the story of the fall of Saigon. And I'm really eager to get his thoughts as somebody who's an expert in the Vietnam War and the fall of Saigon, especially the experience of fighting for a country that then no longer exists, after the fall of Saigon. And his thoughts on the connection between Vietnam and Afghanistan, the parallels. Me as a historian, I certainly am overwhelmed with the parallels. I mean, I think last week I said rarely does history repeat itself, so blatantly as it has done so. We're also hoping to have George J. Veith on. He is a renowned historian who wrote the book on the fall of Saigon called Black Friday, and Curt Rich, who is an ARVN advisor in Vietnam, and who's also, I understand, written a book, although a novel, about the Vietnam War that I would be eager to read. I think it's called The Advisor or The Advisors, and maybe we could get him to talk about that. We have two new OEF and OIF veterans too with us tonight, who are also new authors, Jennifer Hobbs and Kim DeFiori. Hi, Jennifer, how are you?
I am so good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and connect with other people. So thanks for inviting me.
I want to say, we're going to have you say a bit more about your book and also about what you think of the events in Afghanistan. You served in Iraq, I know, but did you serve in Afghanistan also?
No, sir.
Okay. And her book is very interesting, dual memoir about falling in love during a war. And I'm eager to talk to you about that. I do want to say we're going to have Jennifer and Kim on again. I think we have you scheduled for October or November, maybe November, early November, to talk more fully about your stories. And Kim, you're with us too, aren't you, tonight?
Yes, I'm here.
How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Now, do you pronounce, I'm a DE name also.
Yeah.
Do you pronounce DeFiori or DeFiori?
I do DeFiori.
And I do DePastino, and we're both incorrect, apparently.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The Italian pronunciation's much different, but
yeah. And
Americans gotta mess up everything. So it's
my ancestors didn't know how to spell, and they spelled our last name wrong, and maybe yours did the same. But you are also an Army veteran. You did serve in Afghanistan, I know, and I know that you have deep thoughts and feelings about the war in Afghanistan, and I want to get to those later this evening. But I wanted to let people know that you were here. But before we do all that, we do have a little bit of unfinished business from last week. It was National Airborne Day. I felt very badly because I went out. People came out of their way to attend the event last week because they were airborne and they wanted to talk about airborne. And we ended up not talking much at all about airborne. And one of those people was Tony Pursuti. Hello, Tony. How are you? If you want to unmute, good to see you. Tony, is a proud veteran of the 101st Airborne Division, and I thought it would be. And he was emailing me after the program last week, and just kind of emailing some. It's almost like stream of consciousness thoughts on airborne, and I thought it was so interesting what he emailed that I invited him, asked him to come back on, and maybe give us a short little presentation on what makes airborne special. And especially tough, the training especially. And so I thought we would start with you. I do want to make one brief announcement first, and that is about our program that we have tomorrow, which is our Greatest Generation Live program with Glenn Flickinger. This turns out we just decided is going to be a two-parter because we just have so many people coming on to share their expertise on the Battle of Guadalcanal. This is the first offensive operation in the Pacific Theater for the United States. It began in August 1942, so this is the anniversary month, and it continued unexpectedly all the way to February 1943. It involved major land campaigns, the 1st Marine Division, the 2nd Marine Division, the Americal Division, the 25th Army Division, and then there was a whole naval battle of Guadalcanal. It ended up being an extremely important and anguish-filled battle campaign. So we're gonna have some experts on tomorrow night. These are tour guides who give tours on Guadalcanal itself, and then some historians kind of share their perspectives. And we're going to continue the conversation the following week. It looks like on August 31st. So join us here in the Zoom room for Greatest Generation Live, the Battle of Guadalcanal. That will be tomorrow. But I want to thank Tony, Bill. You go by both, right?
I go by both, yes.
What do you prefer?
Well, I like Tony. William is my, my real name, but Anthony is my middle name. So I've gone by Tony all my life.
So we'll call you Tony.
Thank you.
Okay. And you're a member of the 501st Signal Battalion and the 101st Airborne Division. When did you serve, Tony?
I volunteered for the draft in 1959, and I was discharged in 1962.
Oh, okay. So 3 years. You were able to do it in 3 years.
Yes, I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and that is where I took airborne training.
Why in the world would you volunteer for this in 1959 or 1960?
Well, I can be humorous and basically say that when I took my aptitude test coming out of basic training, they said I was best suited to be a forward observer in an artillery outfit. And I said to the sergeant who was interviewing me, I said, "What's that mean?" And he went on to tell me about you're out in the front lines and you're spotting and, you're directing fire. And he said to me, if you see a round coming in 50 yards to your right, you simply call back, or your officer calls back and says, "No, you need to be 50 yards to your left." And I said to him, "What if you're off?" And he looked at me and he said, "Then you don't have any more rear end." And I said, "Well, is there anything else I can do in this man's army?" And he said to me, "Well, you can volunteer." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "Airborne." And I thought he said Air Force. And the next thing I knew, I was on a train to Fort Benning, Georgia.
This is not a joke. You're serious.
Partly, okay, but it goes a long way. Okay, I've had fun with that story, mostly with young ladies. Okay, in my younger days.
That is a good story. Yes, Air Force. That would have been something I would. And you were talking about doing the training at Benning and how in the email that you sent, and how the first part of the training is called ground training,
Yep.
where you're essentially learning how to fall.
Absolutely. They teach you to fall sideways, not forward and not backward. You could break your ankles, you could break your legs if you hit the ground hard. So you're taught to land on the balls of your feet, then onto your calf, onto your thigh, and then onto your rear end.
Okay, and that's it. And you want to try to first your feet, and then you want to share the impact with 4 other points on your body. So not one part of your body is getting the full impact of the fall.
Absolutely.
Was it ever the case? Sometimes you'll see video today of somebody parachuting, and it's like they come down so effortlessly that they kind of land and they're just in a jog. They don't even fall down. That was never the case in your day, or maybe with Airborne, is it?
Well, my experiences go back, Todd, some 60 years. 60 years was post-Korea and pre-Vietnam. We were using back then the T-10D parachute. That's a round mushroom type of a parachute. And the risers were very thick. And you couldn't guide. The best you could do was hang on for your life when you come down and hit the ground. Today, you've got risers, and you see these guys that can come down on a dime. You can control that chute left or right in any way you want. That was not the case 60 years ago. Whole
different world. And this is the T-10D parachute you were talking about. So after ground training, you go to the tower. Is that it?
Yes. At Benning, there was a tower where you can actually be dropped with the chute. In Campbell, they only had tires where you would climb up and come down out of a tire. But those shots right there would be Fort Benning Jump School.
Okay. That's jump school right there. And how about that?
That's what you had in Fort Campbell.
Oh, that's Campbell. Okay. Very good. Very good. And this is somebody coming down from the tower. And then after the tower training, you are ready for your first of 5 jumps that you need to qualify and get those airborne wings, correct?
Jump school consists of anywhere from 3 weeks and perhaps longer if necessary, but you've got ground training and PFT. That would be physical fitness test. If you washed out there, you weren't going to go any further.
Right.
The second week would be tower training. And then the third week would be a series of 5 parachute jumps. Now, that young man on the left there, He is and was a very good friend of mine. And if you can see in the background, we jumped out of C-119 aircraft. They were the flying boxcars.
Yes.
But more important, if you look at that young man, the main chute is on his back, obviously. And what a lot of people fail to recognize is in the front where he's got his hands appropriately placed is your reserve. We can talk a little bit further about that.
Yeah, can we? Is the reserve what I think it is, which is if your chute doesn't open, you go to the reserve?
Absolutely. And you hold that, believe me, you hold that very close and very tight. The fifth jump is a combat jump, and that is when you've got full field gear and your weapon.
So the combat, this is called the Hollywood jump because this is how, in Hollywood, this is how they would outfit a paratrooper jumping out of an airplane. And here it is. Happy birthday. Now stand in the door. Hollywood jump time. I think these guys are on the combat jump. And
Combat
this is
jump
where
is right.
you're much more weighed down, right? With all kinds of gear. How much gear are you carrying?
You're carrying a lot of gear, and depending upon what you did, it meant you may carry a lot more. Okay. Again, now paratroopers use small arms fire, meaning that at the time we didn't have artillery. If you had to jump into combat, it's what you had on your body. That's all you had to support yourself. So the picture there to the left, you can see that young man. It's probably a weapon that he's got in that case. Okay.
Yes. Right.
Now we would refer to the long strap that would be attached to you where your weapon would be dangling down below. We called it a dingleberry. Now, some people may have called it differently, but you're looking at well over 100 pounds right there. Now, these guys are climbing onto the back of probably a C-17 or whatever.
Right.
When I was in, you climbed up steps and you got pushed up the steps and you got pushed out the aircraft. But, that's for a later topic or later time.
And this is all to receive this coveted badge that you get. And Tony, I read today, and you said 4 Hollywood jumps, 1 combat jump. I think maybe today it's 3 Hollywood jumps and 2 combat jumps. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's what I read today because I was so curious about all this. And after those 5 jumps, you get this coveted Airborne badge, correct?
That's correct.
And
now, for those that would jump more than 5 times, perhaps as many as 50 jumps, you could qualify for a master set of wings. And we would refer to that person as a master jumper.
Oh, wow.
Or a master blaster, one of the two.
And way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, you jumped out of this flying boxcar.
The C-119s. The back opened, and there were 2 doors on either side of the plane.
How about that? And you would line up and get pushed out?
Well, as you lined up to get in, again, now let's think about the first jump. And the first jump is one that you remember. You are herded into the plane. Again, now you've got Hollywood gear on. You could take a seat, and on either side of the plane, there were 2 cables that were strung. And those cables basically were called static lines. Now, if you go back to a picture of the chute itself.
Okay.
What is very important is the picture to the right. That yellow colored riser, that's wrapped around your chute. That used to be 5 feet long. Now, if you notice the hook, when you board and you have your commands to stand and hook up, and we can get into that a little bit later, Todd, but you're hooking up that hook to the static cable. And as you leave the aircraft, that 5 feet of riser, that 5 feet of yellow cord right there unwraps. And within about 4 seconds, your chute should open.
So this cord opens your chute.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the static line.
Got it. You're not pulling a ripcord like the demonstration jumpers do from 10,000 feet in the air or whatever.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Now, if you look to the left, and there's somewhat of a story that goes along with this, that harness straps onto you, okay, and it belts on between your legs. Now, one of the stories would be, make sure that you spread your legs when you put that on, because when you leave the aircraft and that chute opens and pops, okay, you might be speaking about 3 octaves higher.
Yes,
Okay?
I can picture it. Sure. Yeah.
So the main thing is a static line. That static line basically is key even till today, where paratroopers use that.
And I'm
Now,
going to try and get a picture of a static line. There's a static
there
line.
you go. That's a great picture. And, as you receive the command of stand, hook up, when you're going through that process, you turn, you check your trooper in front of you to make sure that there's no tanglement in that static line. Then you turn around the opposite way and you check the guy in the back. Because if that static line would happen to get tangled, it could cause a lot of problems.
Oh boy.
But that's hookup. This is stand in the door.
Look at all that gear he has on. And so is this guy the jump
Master.
jump master?
He's the jump master.
Okay.
Yes.
And he's the one gently encouraging you to jump.
There's no, that's a good question there, because politeness is not an attribute. Okay. When the last guy in the stick is pushing to get out, everybody gets pushed. Now, I shouldn't say the worst thing. The worst thing that could happen is that if you fell down, if you tripped, you would literally get pushed as far as you can. Now, I said the next worst thing. The worst thing is what is referred to as, you leave that aircraft and your chute doesn't open. It's called a streamer. A streamer means you're going straight down. And at that point, you better have your hands on that reserve. And that picture, if you just had on the screen, is a good picture, Scott, Todd. If you'll notice that so-called ripcord, the very first guy there, he's got a walkie-talkie.
Yep.
When you leave that aircraft, you've got one hand on either side of that reserve. And if you either have a Mae West or a streamer, you better pull that and throw it out as far as you can to assure that you're not going to get tangled up in the main that's all twisted up above your head. Now, there have been stories, I never saw one, on a mass jump, that there are multiple planes and you might be halfway down and you've got paratroopers jumping over your head. And the stories have gone that there is a streamer coming down and you just grab onto that guy as tight as you can and you both come down using one chute. Now, if that ever happens, you're going to hit the ground hard, okay? So, and a Mae West is somewhat like a woman's brassiere, okay? It doesn't unwrap totally, so you've got 2 halves, so to speak, of a chute that are open, and you're going to come down a little bit faster, okay? But it's not as bad as a streamer.
Wow. And so you can see how the chute is harnessed here onto this guy. This is somebody who looks like, why am I doing this again? Which I could completely understand. But and I heard, Tony, that like as you're going to the door, you're supposed to shuffle your feet so you're not going to trip over anything, right?
It's called the Airborne Shuffle.
Airborne Shuffle.
And Todd, anyone that's listening or participating in the meeting tonight that had gone through jump school, if they want to offer comments, believe me, I mean, I'm more than happy to have those folks, tag along. But when I was at that point that you see on that screen right now, there's about 4 seconds from the time you leave that plane until that static line opens your chute. Oh. You're going to count 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. And if you hear it pop, and when it pops, believe me, you better have your chin down into your neck, into your chest. You better have your legs together and hold that reserve, because when it pops, you're going to go horizontal, not vertical, but horizontal, until you see that chute open. And that's whenever you say a prayer, saying, thank you very much. Okay.
Wow. So
these guys are jumping from the tail end of a plane.
Yeah.
It's still a You're still going to get, you're going to feel it when that chute opens. The old C-124s that we used back then, the prop blast was so bad they had to feather, and if Ben Wright's listening, he can comment on what I'm about to say, but they had to feather the inside props for fear of throwing guys up against the side of the aircraft.
I do have a picture of that plane. And I know we're taking a little bit of time with this, but what do you mean by feather the props?
Well, from what we were told, they had to kind of like reduce the power of the props so that it wouldn't blast either side coming out of the plane.
Okay. And this is the C-124 Old Shaky.
Old Shaky.
And you jumped out of this too. Okay. This is great stuff. Okay. So when you're in this position going down, there's a lot that you're thinking about, I take it. Obviously, keep your chin down, keep your legs together, and then you have to start thinking about the landing.
When that chute pops and you're coming down, at first, you say to yourself, oh God, don't let this harness break. Okay, I'll fall right out of it. Okay, so once you get over that prayer and you're coming down, and it's a nice glide. I mean, you feel like, gee, this is great. Okay, then all of a sudden you see the ground coming up fast. Yeah. That's the concern that you say to yourself. That's when you try to be as flexible as you can, because you want to prepare for that that parachute follow landing is what they refer to it as. But when you do hit the ground, you practice the POC, and that's a point of contact. And that's whenever you truly want to try to land on your side.
And look at all these jumpers. Oh boy. And this here is a landing.
That person has landed successfully. If it's a windy day, he or she better get up and run around to the back of the chute and collapse it, or you might get dragged across the whole field. There's a perfect shot right there. Usually, if you're in a jump and you see a guy like that, you help him out and try and jump on his chute so that you can collapse it.
To collapse it, because that will drag you across that field, right?
It take you a long way.
Wow. Wow. And here he is successfully pulling it back in and gathering his chute. Here's a field of lots of people doing that.
Absolutely. Great shot, Todd. That's a very good shot right there.
What an exhilarating experience that must be, especially for the first time. I did it, right?
Well, once you're on the ground, and don't forget now, that's a government issue parachute. So the government, they give you a parachute, you better bring it back. As you bring it back, and the thing that you're looking at is that drop zone right there, that DZ. The trucks that take you back to where your barracks are might be in the background somewhere. So you could have a mile or so to walk toward the DZ or toward the trucks. Now, again, I'm going back a number of years, but I like to kind of close by telling a little story. And that is that you gather your chute, you haul it back best you can. You're looking for the trucks. You deposit your chute into one of the trucks, and then you climb onto the truck to go back home, back to your barracks or back to your company. Now, it's a requirement before you get onto that truck that you carefully check your shorts to make sure that they're still clean.
Of course,
oh,
of course, Tony. And I want to just remind people that I think most of us know a lot about the storied history of the 82nd and the 101st in World War II, jumping in Normandy, but there also were jumps in Vietnam and Korea, 2 in Korea, the first on October 20th, 187th Regimental Combat Team just north of Pyongyang, and then a second one, I think nearby 6 months later. And the combat jump in Vietnam occurred in 1967, and it was with the 173rd Airborne Battalion. And do we have or brigade? Do we have Pat Hughes with us tonight? I know he was a member of that unit. He didn't participate in the jump, but this was a big one. This was a massive jump, and I think that was the last U.S. combat airborne operation. I think. I could be wrong about that, but I want to do two or three more things about Airborne before we go on. Oh, Tony, you wanted to talk a little bit about the role of Airborne in World War II, right?
Well, Airborne, from a serious point of view, as a young man growing up in that era, Korea and the Second World War were things that were in my memory. And I always wanted to do it. I wanted to do what they did in Normandy. This picture right here, I think, tells it all. You see a guy, he's got combat gear on. He's got his neck tucked into his chin. He's got his legs together. These guys were true super sky soldiers of the Second World War and in Korea. But when you think about the airborne jumps in Normandy, these were night jumps with anti-aircraft going off around them, landing not in a drop zone, but landing in a field somewhere, in a tree, in a stump. There were stories of guys, that came down, hit a tree, broke their neck, and they hung there. And it just, for me, I have a great admiration for those sky soldiers, that jumped in the Second World War.
Tony, when you were in Airborne, you had the benefit of 20 years experience of U.S. Army airborne training. These soldiers in World War II did not. I mean, they were kind of making it up as they went along. They were learning as they went. It really was the American paratrooper experience was really still in its infancy, I should say. This is a story of John Steele.
We've spoken of him, Todd.
Excuse me?
I said we have spoken of him. For those that remember the movie, The Longest Day, that paratrooper that jumped into Normandy was played by Red Buttons, an actor who I'm sure is long gone. But he got hung up on a church steeple, and the bells rang and rang and rang and rang, and you had to see the movie to appreciate it. And I was talking to Todd once about this, and Todd took a tour to Normandy, and he came back and he filled me in on all the details, and it was appreciated, Todd. Thank you.
Oh, you bet. Yeah. And it's still there. I mean, you can see they put up a mannequin. He's not there, but they did put up a mannequin with the parachute, and you can see it there in the background. This is right next to the Airborne Museum in St. Mary-Église. And there he is himself years later, pointing up to where he got caught on the steeple. Yeah. It's anybody who's visited St. Mary-Église in Normandy will remember that site. I want to invite anybody has that airborne badge to kind of weigh in. I know John Worley does. And I know also, John, I'll put you on the spot, John, because you have a very kind, interesting offer to the group. You are a clinical psychologist, and I think you've been dedicated to figuring out why in the world anybody would want to jump out of a perfectly good plane, and among other things. And you've developed, I call it a personality inventory, but I know that you would not. It's a Worley identity profile, and it's an assessment instrument, an assessment tool that anybody can benefit from to gauge and measure and determine their temperament, character, and personality. And you've offered that anybody here in this meeting who would like to take it can take it free of charge. You offered it to me, and I did take it. Could you unmute yourself, John? We can't hear you, John. Can you unmute yourself?
While John is unmuting, we have several comments in the chat saying that there were jumps that happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, Grenada. Hundreds. John Hawes has a couple chats in here, and there was a question by Deborah for Tony whenever we get back to him.
Okay. Wow. Was I way off? So there have been jumps. Vietnam was not the last. Okay. Maybe it was the last large. Maybe that's what Jeff Witherell said, the last large brigade size jump or something like that. John Worley, can you talk about your offer a little bit?
Yes. I am a clinical psychologist, and I have created a temperament assessment. Most assessments out there on the internet or in the market are based on personality or character. And both of those are fluid. They change based upon your environmental focus when you complete the assessment. But my assessment is based on temperament, and temperament is unique in that it is based upon your genetic character, your genetic makeup. It doesn't change. Your temperament is determined at conception. And at conception, that is determined, and that never, ever changes. What changes is your character. Your character is determined by your beliefs, your values, your morals, which are chosen or adopted or molded by your family, your environment, your relatives, your family, and your personality is chosen out of your character. And your personality is a mask that you put on that you want people to see. It's self-selected, and you change it at will based upon where you are, right? But your temperament is still the same. It never changes. Mm-hmm. And I've spent 37 years identifying temperament, and I use it in the corporate world. I do it with executive development, family development, counselor. It's an academic instrument. I've used it in colleges and schools and families, and it's a counselor's tool. It's a corporate HR tool. It's just used in every element where there are people. It's a valuable instrument. I'm willing to give it to anybody that want it. Just send me your name and email. It's a great tool for assessing relationship developments and comparisons, family development, sports, ministry, corporations, any place where there are people, it's valuable. Right. And it's only 60 questions. It takes you 7 to 10 minutes. And I have sold it for as little as $10 a piece, and I've sold it to Wall Street corporate individuals for $1,000 a piece.
John, why don't you put your email here in the chat, and we'll transfer it over to the Facebook side, and people who would like to take it could email you and just say, hey, can I have the link to that instrument? I'd love to take it. Can I ask you a question, John?
Yes.
This is a toughie. Is there a relationship between your airborne service and your decision to go into psychology?
No.
Okay. Honest enough. I thought there might be.
I'll tell you why I became a paratrooper.
Why did you become a paratrooper?
I was a freshman in high school, and this recruiter came to the high school, and he was a paratrooper. He was 6'4", and he had those little tiny wings on his chest. And I looked up and saw him, and he had his paratrooper boots on. I looked up and saw him. I says, I want to do that. I want to jump out of a plane, and I want to get a pair of those wings.
Absolutely.
When I was 17 years old, I enlisted in the Army. My mother and dad had to sign for me. And I graduated in May and went in the Army in July and stayed there for 15 years and was in the 82nd for 7 years and have 98 jumps, and served in the 101st, served with combat in both the 82nd and the 101st. And I've jumped out of the C-119s like Tony, the C-119s, 123s, 124s, 47s, and all the helicopters. Love jumping. Love that adrenaline rush is great, isn't it, Tony?
Oh. Thank you. Okay. I like the story about the paratrooper you saw, and you wanted to be like him. I had the very same experience.
Absolutely. I got a picture of when I was with the 3rd Battalion, 506 Infantry in Vietnam on Christmas Day in 1967. We're up in the Central Highlands on the edge of a mountain, and I'm sitting there cleaning my weapon. We're just getting ready to go back into battle again. Christmas Day. Great picture. And we're just all geared up because we're 101st and we're, kicking ass and taking names.
Right. I got to see that picture. I want to see that picture.
Well, I have it right here. I can show it to you. It's right here.
Put it up. Show it. Yeah, show it to us here if you can. Put it up to the camera.
Okay, I will. It's right there. It is.
Oh, you have it on your computer. You don't have it with you physically.
Oh, no, I have it on
on your computer.
Yeah.
Email it to me. Oh.
While you're finding that, Tony, from Deborah, could you define what they call a cigarette roll?
What's a cigarette roll?
Oh yeah, I have a cigarette roll.
It says, she says she did a story in Puerto Rico where 100 airborne jumped at the same time, and that was what they were most concerned with not happening.
I can tell you what it is.
And both.
So you do not want a cigarette roll?
No, you don't.
Okay.
No.
Could you tell us what it is?
Yeah, I can.
Then please do so.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
A cigarette roll is when you come out of the airplane and your chute doesn't open. What it does is it rolls together like a cigarette, like this. Yes.
Ooh.
And it doesn't open. It just rolls like this. And it looks like a cigarette coming down out of the sky. It's called
That's
a cigarette
horrible.
roll. Oh yeah, you're in trouble. But you still have your reserve that you can pull. But if you don't, when you pull your reserve, you got to open it and shake it to get it open, because if you just pull it and it goes up, it'll wrap around that cigarette roll and you're still dead.
Absolutely, John. You're right on target.
That's what Tony was saying. You got to shake it and get it out away from you and open it up. If you get a Mae West or a streamer or anything like that, you got to do that.
Do we have any other questions or comments from anybody here on the Zoom side? Oh, Hughes, how are you? You're airborne. You're airborne also, aren't you?
Oh. Yeah, brings back good memories. I mean, there's some humor in some of this stuff. The gentleman talked about being in a stick and the last person in the stick, pushing everybody out the door. And the primary reason for that is that you don't want to miss the drop zone, because you're the guy or the person has that long walk to the trucks. The other thing that jumps to mind is exiting the aircraft is being aware of the other jumpers, because it was not uncommon in mass jumps for somebody to come up underneath you and take all the air out of your chute, which causes your chute to collapse. And then you start that opportunity to hit the ground before everybody else. So it wasn't uncommon to see individuals actually running across somebody else's parachute to jump off and clear the area.
Boy, you guys are just,
they called that stealing my air, right?
Yes,
stealing my air.
Stealing my air, okay.
It
was not thought it was not uncommon on a mass jump, although I wasn't involved with it, that you could bounce off of someone's chute.
Oh, I've done that. Yeah, I have come down on top of people's chutes 3 different times and sat on top of it and slid off the side of their chute. And then when you slide off of it, you've lost air and you drop way down below them. It's dangerous, very dangerous.
Guys, so far you've given me way more reasons why not to join the Airborne than to join. But I'm really enjoying this. John Worley, please don't forget to put your email here on the Zoom side.
I think I didn't I?
I don't think so.
Where's the Zoom at?
Okay. Hey, Elle, I think we have John's email. If you want to share it, why don't you share it?
Yeah.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you, John.
Okay.
And anybody who wants to take that,
I'll do husbands and wives. I'll do your families. I'll do anybody that wants it done on this network.
That's wonderful. Thank you, John. Very kind.
Well,
very kind of you to
just need
offer
your
that.
name and your email. That's all.
Very good. And I so wish I could take back my statement about the last combat jump being Vietnam. It wasn't, but I do remember Jeff Witherell saying last week that it was the last brigade size jump was Vietnam. So it was Hughes, you were there for a jump in Kandahar.
Well, there are 2 things. One, we had one of the Rangers battalion seize Kandahar very early on during Enduring Freedom. And then during Iraqi Freedom, the 173rd again did a mass jump, entire brigade, almost 1,000 troopers, and they got credit for a combat jump in northern Iraq.
Okay. I want to go to Connor Richie, 16-year-old from Lafayette, Louisiana. Hi, Connor. How are you? I'm so grateful to Connor for, again, lowering the median age of our group here by significantly, just by attending. Connor, you're with us, aren't you? On the Zoom side here?
Looks like he just left, but let's see if he comes back.
Yeah, please do let me know if he does come back. And
may I interrupt you for a moment?
yes, Tony.
While you're waiting for that young man, John and anyone else who had gone through airborne training, there's a special bond. I mentioned to you at one time that if I see someone with a 82nd or a 101 or a 173rd or whatever, I'll go out of my way to find those guys and say, hey, buddy, how you doing? How many jumps have you had? Okay. And there's a common bond there. Okay. Strong bond. So, John, it's nice of you to talk about your experiences, and whoever else, be it yous. Thanks, guys. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Tony. Enjoyed meeting you. Enjoyed listening to your stories. Thank you very much.
We'll come back to Connor. I want to reintroduce here Jennifer and Kim, both Army veterans, both OIF, OEF veterans, and both authors. They've done something that I admire so deeply, and that is to take their extraordinary experience of military service. And I should tell people who are here for the first time, I'm not a veteran. I'm a historian. Sean's not a veteran. My daughter Ellie isn't a veteran. None of us here are veterans, but we're very taken and fascinated with veteran stories. And we've become convinced that our veterans have extraordinary experience and perspective that the rest of the population doesn't have, and that it comes from, hard experience, from an immersion in a very special subculture. But it comes with, as we've heard from the Airborne, comes with danger and often trauma. And we hear a lot of that trauma here on the Veterans Breakfast Club. But rare is it the veteran who takes that trauma and crafts a narrative, crafts a book out of it to educate and inspire us. Kim and Jennifer both have, and these are their books. Kim's book is Lessons from Thor, Healing with a Service Dog's Touch, and Jennifer's is Calmed, Growth After Trauma. Jennifer, let's start with you. Could you tell us what inspired you to write a book about your war experience and specifically your trauma?
As far as inspiration, I would say originally my love for writing ignited as a kid, but that's not where this came from. This came from a very, very hard year in Iraq. We were about 1,500 meters from Abu Ghraib. We were located on a base called Log Base Sites between Abu Ghraib and Camp Liberty, which was a part of like the Baghdad International Airport area. We were full, our whole base was just full of National Guard and Reserve units, which at the time we didn't know. Okay, you told us where to go, we went there. And then as the year went on, we ended up identifying that like there was a lot of media attention at home because of the fact that we were National Guard and Reserve units being put as this in the spot where when we get attacked and people would have to drive around us to go respond to the attacks. And so my story, I started writing more as a coping mechanism just out of Iraq, just kind of trying to put things that were in my head on paper, the things I wasn't able to, and not even say out loud, but as you're trying to just get back to normal life, you're not busting out with those things like, oh, let's talk about this. Like, this is the topic of conversation, and it's not.
Jennifer, do people ask you? We hear from, we have a few Vietnam vets here tonight, and it was very common then. They'd come back from war. Mark Sprigg de la OC, for example, would come back from war. Nobody would ask him about it. Nobody would talk to him about it. Was that the same with your experience, or was it different, do you think?
I would say it was different. The people closest to you that like love you so much and are like, they want to understand you the most and they're most apprehensive. I feel like they struggle the most to ask questions. From my experience, that's what I've seen. But like just other people, acquaintances, random strangers, they'll be the first ones to throw out crazy questions that and I mean, honestly, it's not crazy questions. It's just it's where society is. It's where it's at. And unfortunately, like, people aren't adapted or like even knowledgeable and enlightened that, like, probably not the best way to approach a veteran.
You are so diplomatic. That's exactly it. It's
not.
How do I raise my hand?
Yeah, John.
Listen, I hear her heart. I hear her passion. She's talking about things that she can't talk about. Listen, we have been traumatized. We who have PTSD, we have got so much embedded pain within us that we can't express it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not here. We're there. We've been damaged. We're hurting. We don't know what to do with it because we don't have a way to deal with it. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been dealing with this for over 40 years as a professional.
I'm actually so glad that you mentioned that, John, because a year ago, so Todd, back to your question, you had asked, like, where did I get this? At first, I started as a coping mechanism out of Iraq 16 years ago, but it was a year and a half ago when I had suffered a head injury. And then I found myself in a dark place. And then I was like, I need to do something for myself. I need to, you know what, I'm going to get back to writing. I really like to do that. And so here I took what I really wanted to do 16 years ago and I dug it up. And you're absolutely right, John. Like, we have all this. And in last summer, as I tackled all this and I wanted to write this book, I read this phenomenal book, phenomenal in my opinion. Like, it's called Struggle Well. I'll type it into the chat box. Struggle Well, Thriving in the Aftermath of Trauma.
We had the author on one of our podcasts.
Yeah. By Ken Falk and Josh Goldberg.
Sure. Oh, there's post-traumatic growth.
You guys, that's amazing that you met him. I just recently, I'll get off on a tangent real quick and then I'll bring it back in. But I had an interview recently with Authority magazine and they asked me if there was anyone I could meet, who would I want to meet? And I really want to meet them. So last year I sat down and I was reading that book, trying to just, not only do I want to put my story down and help other people and enlighten them, but I also want to continue to educate myself so that I can best reach people, help them. And in that book, they talk about how the pinnacle of life is not when you've gotten to this like point of success on the mountain and you're earning 6 digits. It's actually when you turn right around, go back down the mountain and help someone else back up the mountain. And so like that book was the perfect timing to hit my life and the growth I was going through. And so I wrote my book over the last year. It is a dual memoir. It started really just as me telling the story of my time in 2004, where my unit, a transportation unit, experienced a great deal of trauma. Those 5 boots on the cover, they represent the 5 people that we lost in our unit. I hung them on power lines, and this means so much to me. But the cover came a long way, and I ended up doing this cover because my battle buddy, Jessica Cobby, who died in the truck, in the same truck that my now husband was hit by a roadside bomb in, and had like his whole upper jaw crushed, all his teeth knocked out. In the same roadside bomb he was hit in October 6th, 2003. So his alive day is coming up soon. Jessica told us after the first 4 people that died, because Jessica in our unit was the 5th person that we lost. And this is only like 6 months in. And after the 4th person, we walked away from that memorial, and each memorial they played Toby Keith, American Soldier. Great song, you guys, great song. However, after 4 memorials, that becomes like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be something more. And she walked away from that 4th memorial and she told all of us, and she's in my platoon. So like my people of 30, right. One of my best friends, she said, you guys, if I die, don't you play that damn song at my memorial. Don't you do it. You better play something like, joking around, she said, damn, it feels good to be a gangster, and throw my boots over these power lines. Well, we never got to play Damn, It Feels Good to Be a Gangster. We played Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, but we never got to throw her boots over the power lines. And now on the dedication page is by far my favorite page of the whole book. And that is because I dedicated it to her. And I told her that her boots will hang forever now.
Oh,
ever.
Jennifer, let's do this on November 1st. We're going to have you back on to tell your story more fully. And Sean, we should get Ken Falk on with us to provide some broader context. Wow, what a fascinating and eloquent spokesperson you are, Jennifer. I want to go to Kim. Kim, you served in Afghanistan, and I'm going to come up right and get into our second subject tonight, which is, the events of the fall of Kabul or Afghanistan. That had to have just affected you deeply last week.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm a West Point grad, so I've lost several classmates in Afghanistan and Iraq, and just like, even though intellectually I know, like, we go there and we fight, and like, I didn't sign up to free Afghanistan. I signed up to like fight for America, the way of life and everything. And intellectually I get it, that like I was defending my brothers and sisters, but you can't help but have that back of the mind thought of like, what was it all for if we're doing all this work to take down the Taliban, and then the Taliban so swiftly takes over Afghanistan right as we leave.
Yeah.
And like, there was just no effort. Like, we knew when we were there, because I was a military police officer and we were training Afghan police. We knew their capabilities were horrible. They're corrupt and everything, but it's just like, I know, like, I haven't slept through a night since August 28th, 2010. And it's just like, what is it all for if we just handed it back over? And there's just like that deep sense of like, yeah, just confusion. But at the same time, I'm relieved because the next generation's not going to go there as well.
Oh, I'm sorry to laugh. Kim, we have veterans here who are what, 50 years older than you are, yeah, who they went through this movie before. Yes. I mean, I sure hope you're right, but
it's just a rerun.
It's a rerun. That's what I can't get over.
It's a rerun.
Hey, Todd, it's Pete. Do you mind if I say something?
How you doing, Pete?
I'm still kicking, man. We Vietnam veterans came home, and we were called baby killers. And the ones who have survived to this age,
we have found a power capable of quieting Pete Mecca. All right.
And this point of life, now we're called, we were just.
I'm sorry, you froze for a second there, Pete.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. But we came home baby killers. Now we're heroes. We just did our jobs under impossible rules of engagement. The big difference in my mind is that, at least for now, the veterans coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, they are not treated like we were. So that is good, but I tell everyone in my presentations on my radio shows, be careful, because if it's going to benefit the politicians for a vote, they'll turn on the veterans in a heartbeat again. I don't trust politicians. I don't think a lot of people do. But welcome home, ladies. Okay. God bless you.
Absolutely. And Kim, I'm sorry I stepped on your thoughts here. I've read a couple interviews with you, and I did read that you said that when you went to Afghanistan, you really did think that you were fighting for their freedom, but it didn't take you very long on the ground in Afghanistan to realize that you were fighting for your brothers and sisters with you on the ground.
Yeah, we went on a mission, and the Afghan general didn't want to go on it, and so we convinced him to go. And then we saw him signal an IED, and he blew our truck in half. And at that point, we just knew, like, there's really no hope for these people. Like, they'll live their lives, they'll have the next person take over. And like, today I get it though, because if you told me, and you knocked on my door and you're the Taliban, you told me you're going to slaughter my house unless I work for you, I understand it, but it doesn't make that sacrifice hurt any less. And like, to the point, like, I've always preached to everyone that we're so grateful to Vietnam people, because they did the groundwork to make sure that we were received well, that the VA was built up. And yeah, you got complaints about the VA, but it's a million times better. And we're all so grateful for it, even if we can't voice it all the time.
Thank you for saying that, Kim. And that is absolutely true. I just know, just from, working with veterans for 13 years, that the benefits that you do enjoy really are the work and the blood and sweat and tears of the Vietnam veterans working so hard to get justice when they returned home. Don, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I do have a comment. I appreciate what those ladies are saying. It's very deep, and this is becoming deeper as more veterans are speaking up today. But you know what upset me the most? Watching the news today, they showed several civilian people working the weekend, trying to get their friends, getting their people back from Afghanistan. When you see on the news our senator leaders are yucking it up at some type of dancing party, Schumer and the rest of the I don't want to get political, but it's just nauseating.
Don't get political.
It's just nauseating, okay, to see this when we have other people, civilians, this one Army group was working on getting people back, and people that should be working on this are completely ignoring it. It's very disturbing to me. And I hope the other veterans can chime in. I don't want to get too passionate with it right now.
And I want to remind people, Kim did write a book, and we're Lessons from Floor, and we're going to have her back on. Kim, I do hope you could make it November 1st to talk further about your book.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay, you'll be there. And Ellie, if you could put a link to Kim's book and Jennifer's book here on the Zoom side. Can I go to Hugh, and then I want to turn it over to Sean too a bit. Hugh Pham, you're an Afghanistan veteran. You're an intelligence officer in Afghanistan. You also have become this expert on the Vietnam War, especially on the fall of of Saigon. What have you been thinking this past week?
Well, it takes me back to why I joined. So I actually did join the Army to help the Afghan people because of my background as the son of South Vietnamese refugees. I know that sometimes the good guy, freedom can lose, democracy can be lost unless you fight for it, unless people are willing to help fight for it. And so I remember the moment I decided to join. I was actually, this was like fall of 2008. I was the last person you would imagine to join the Army because I had long hair. I was a total hipster. I was at poetry open mic night. And I remember just seeing the news play on this television screen in the back of the cafe. No one's paying attention to it, but it's, coverage of the war. And I just realized there's a war going on. This is happening in, I think the insurgency in Iraq was at its height. And I just thought, these people can lose their country. And I don't want them to have that same fate that my parents had to suffer. And so the very next Monday morning, I went to my college campus and went to the ROTC office and asked, how do I join? And so it's kind of disappointing to see the reason why I joined sort of fall apart, because I thought that when I went to Afghanistan that I could keep that from happening. I could vindicate my family's past. And unfortunately, it hasn't played out. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit disillusioned by the whole thing. So I was active duty for 5 years. I went to Afghanistan in 2012. I was the assistant intelligence officer to an infantry battalion. So I was with grunts on the ground. And I left active duty in 2016. I rejoined the reserves in 2018 because I wanted to continue serving. But, I guess, I've spent the last week filling out my resignation packet, actually.
Oh boy. Hugh, that is what you've just said seems to me like heartbreak upon heartbreak. The first heartbreak is what's happening in Afghanistan. The second is that you joined because you understood from your family's experience that democracy can be lost, and that you wanted to help to redeem a country from that fate that your family suffered. And it didn't work.
And I think the other heartbreak is just seeing officers above me just not care. When I tried to warn them the similarities between this war and the Vietnam War, the way we dealt with the locals, the way we dealt with our allied partners. Part of the reason why I left active duty in 2016 was because I had a very negative evaluation from a commanding officer. I was a platoon leader at the time. He was my company commander. And he just said that I wasn't good enough to stay. And I said, sir, I believe you're making a mistake because you're getting rid of an officer here who really believes in the mission, really believes in what's in what we're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan. You want to trade me out for someone who can just fill PowerPoint get PowerPoint slides done on time and do all the paperwork. And he goes, yeah, pretty much. And when he admitted that, I just realized there's nothing I can do. There was nothing I could say to this man. And I realized that idealism, the ideas that we try to say we fight for in the Army, I realized that's just not always the reality. The Army is full of a lot of careerists, unfortunately.
Oh boy. I know that Dave Seaver. Dave, were you recently in Afghanistan? I thought Dave Seaver could hear me. I thought Dave Seaver was with us. How about John Hawes? I know John Worley. How about John Hawes and John Worley? John Hawes, Afghanistan veteran. What are you thinking nowadays?
How's it going, Todd?
Good. Good to see you.
I've been paying attention to the news over the last week, and the outcome isn't surprising. I've kind of always expected it, but the manner in which it's occurring has been absolutely despicable. That's been the upsetting thing.
Yeah. Yep.
The way that we've hastily pulled out, left our allies there to, people that helped us. There.
Hi. It's your daddy.
The way we've abandoned the people that were there, to help us, and the way that we've actually strengthened, the enemy. We've literally been in combat against the Taliban for the last 20 years. And we've now just equipped them better than they ever were. But one of the things that I can't seem to get over is that when we went in 2001, they were equipped with 30, 40-year-old Russian technology that we just slotted to the side. And we've now let them become what we call a near peer, or a peer in ground combat. They now have the same weapons, the same body armor, the same night vision technology. And that's really upsetting.
Phew. Oh boy. John Worley, what were we going to say?
Hugh Turner's also has his hand up, and Hugh raised his hand as well.
Okay. John, Hughes, and then Hugh.
Hugh, I wanted to address comments that were made about family, Vietnam, Afghanistan. I appreciate your comments so very, very much. You're obviously a very, very dedicated officer, a very dedicated service person, and you serve sincerely. You are overcompensating because you're allowing yourself to become too emotionally involved in your job, and you're being over responsible because of your commitment to your job and to the people. And that's a dangerous place for you to be in. And you're taking the responsibility of your commanding officer, which is not your responsibility to do, because of your dedication and your commitment to the loyalty of the people. You love them. You're tenacious. You're doing everything you can, and you can't do it because you're not allowed to, because they will not let you do that. You're hamstrung, you're tied, you're bound, you're forbidden to do that. And it has broken your heart. And it's breaking our hearts to hear your testimony, because you're unable to fulfill your heart's desire, which is to help people.
Yeah.
And we understand that about you, and I appreciate you for that. And every time you step out and do that, you're going to get traumatized over and over, because you're in an ideological position in the military. And that's what's going to happen, because that is the military way, unfortunately.
It's very well put, John. Hughes, and very,
you, John.
I hope Hugh can find some wisdom or solace in those words. Hughes, Turner?
Yeah, I guess I'm one of the old farts. I reported to Fort Benning, Georgia. I think I talked about this before. The week that Saigon fell, as a brand new lieutenant, and I was reporting to Airborne School. And fast forward, 20, 30 years later, as a brigade combat team commander and the senior planner for both Afghanistan and Iraq, to watch things unfold the way they did. To the gentlemen who served in Vietnam, we owe a lot to them. And to touch on a little bit what Kim talked about a little bit, I think, and that society today has been able to separate the warrior from the war.
Yeah.
And it's taken us, several decades to, I think, evolve to that point. I'm not Pollyannish about Afghanistan or Iraq. Those of us, who went in with the first combat teams, I was one of them, in November of 2001. We had these academic discussions among ourselves as planners and then as executors, why we are there. We had one school of thought, and I think you've heard me equate this to the movie Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood and the bar scene with Morgan Freeman on display, and Clint Eastwood goes in and kills everybody. And then coming out, he says, hey, listen, anybody shoots me, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill his wife. I'm going to kill all his friends. And then I'm going to burn his damn house down. That was one school of thought in terms of how we should deal with 9/11. Go in there, we're there to find out who did this to us on 9/11 and get the fuck out of there, pardon my French. Then there was the other academic discussion we had, which is, okay, do we actually do that? Or do we have a responsibility to deny a safe haven for terrorists? And oh, by the way, what does that mean?
Right.
Do we get into nation building? Do we establish governance? Do we put in institutions? And how long would that take? So those were the probably two very general discussions we had at a very senior level when we went into Afghanistan. And then, of course, we got sidetracked. And I think you've heard me discuss this. And I think that John Hollis was involved in this discussion when we talked about Iraq, how Iraq took our eyes off of Afghanistan, and we were more involved in regime change than anything else in Iraq. But I think that what jumps out at me, we knew early on, and I will just talk a little bit about Operation Anaconda, where we thought we had bin Laden. And he got away. And he probably got away because of some of the warlords who we thought were allies,
right,
on our part in the Shalikote Valley. Let's just be blunt. So we knew, what they were capable and not capable of doing. And I don't think anybody should be surprised that the collapse would come about the way it did. When you hear interpreters and those Afghans who supported us saying, we got to get out of Dodge because we're concerned we're going to get killed. That was very telling very early on, that they knew what was going to happen. And the other thing that jumps out at me, I was talking with my sergeant major, my brigade sergeant majors, where we watched Kabul start to collapse very quickly, starting with actually Kandahar and all the other provinces, is that his son is a platoon leader in the 82nd now. We got kids there in Afghanistan now who weren't even born when I was first there.
Yep.
Extraordinary.
Yes.
Absolutely extraordinary.
We've never had a war like that.
So, it's, so there's a whole host of things that come to mind. I will say this, those of us who were involved very early on in Afghanistan felt that we were special. We knew we were special because we had the opportunity to strike back at folks who brought the towers down on 9/11.
Right.
And we knew that there were a lot of people that would do anything to trade places with us.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first 8,000 that went into Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We knew that.
I mean, you were not only punishing the murderers, you were preventing another similar murderous event from taking place.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we felt we were special. And then, just to watch how things have morphed and evolved over the last 2 decades has been extraordinary. We don't stand down from wars very well.
No.
We stand up very well. We don't stand down very well.
No, we don't.
Hugh Pham, you may have something to say, but I absolutely I would love to bring Curt Rich into the conversation. He's a Vietnam veteran. He was an advisor to ARVN. He's also an author. I think your novel, Curt, is The Advisors.
That's correct.
And based on your experience, and we have somebody here with us tonight, Richard Gotch, who I think met you in Vietnam. I think so. Richard, if you want to share that story. But thank you for joining us. So Richard Gotch, feel free to share that story. But Curtis Rich, I know Hugh might want to have you talk about something in particular, but I just want to ask a general question. What parallels do you see between what's happening now in Afghanistan and what happened to your generation in Vietnam?
Way too many. I tell people that the Congress threw the war because the ARVNs were doing pretty well after we left, as long as they had ammunition. I was an advisor, so I had ARVN troops. And I had a battalion team that went into Cambodia, captured a large enemy arms cache and 22 tons of rice and an SKS rifle that's now in the Cody Museum. So I thought these guys did pretty well. And at the end of the war, the last unit to lose was the 5th ARVN Division in An Loc. That was the last place the North Vietnamese raised their flag. And the commanding general shot himself as they stormed into his office. And Hugh has shown me that their grandchildren now are reenactors of the 5th ARVN Division, which I think is really cool because they've just been completely ignored by history. We didn't think that much of them then because we thought the 11th Armored Cav and the 82nd Airborne were kind of the examples of what soldiers should be like. Well, they are, but not everybody gets to be that good. And they weren't that well equipped. They didn't have the stuff we did. I discovered they didn't have penicillin for their medics.
And Cal, I see you, Cal Tai Hay. You might be an ARVN veteran yourself. I'm not sure, but if you are.
No, I'm not, but I grew up in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. I left Vietnam on the last day of April 30th, 1975. So I have lived under the Vietnam War, during the Vietnam War. And then I've been witnessing, I live in this country since then, and this is my adopted country.
Right.
I love this country so much. I went through the debacle of Jimmy Carter with the 57 hostage in the embassy. And then I saw the, brought back to like credibility under President Reagan. And it broke my heart when I saw President Biden ill-conceived, hastily withdraw from Afghanistan, from Kabul, that basically destroyed, humiliated this country and all of the veteran, the U.S. veteran, to attend the world in there. It just broke my heart. So I saw your emails. I decided to come here and let all the veterans know that I'm not a veteran, but I deeply appreciate everything you did for my mother native country, Vietnam. I felt bad when you guys, one of the gentlemen said that when you came back, you were called baby killer. We never, my generation back then and even now, we always appreciate you, the U.S. veteran. And that's what I appreciate you allow me to express my deep sentiment thought.
Thank you, Cal. That is so wonderful. If you can at some point email me or put your email here in the chat so that I could get in touch with you, because we often love to do programs with Vietnamese Americans and would love to include you if you and would love to hear more of your story of growing up in Vietnam and escaping on April 30th, 1975. Hugh, Sean and Hugh, is there a direction you'd like this conversation to go, or do you want to just open it up to kind of comments and questions?
I feel like that's almost a, sorry, go ahead, Hugh.
Well, yeah, first I'd like to just say thanks to Curt. Curt was kind enough to participate in my documentary film. I didn't want to just interview South Vietnamese veterans, but I also kind of wanted to show what was it like from the American perspective working with them, and Curt provided that perspective so well, and he does it in just the most American way possible. I love it. He's a fellow Texan like me, and even in the film he says that we both share a pioneer mindset, Texan and Vietnamese people alike. But I also want to thank Cal for voicing his support. It's very kind of him. I'm assuming he was too young to have fought in the war, but it's people like him that really paved the way for the first generation of Vietnamese American veterans like myself. They're the ones that kept the stories alive. They're the ones that taught us about our family history. People like my dad, because my dad was too young to fight. His brother was old enough to fight. But he told me, he was the one that my father taught me, look, freedom can be lost. I've had to leave my country and I had to come here. And when he came here, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy, and because he wanted to give back. He wanted to give back to the United States. And that inspired my service years and years later. But I'm very, very happy that the Vietnamese American community today is now standing up united to voice support for Afghan refugees. 3 weeks ago, just 3 weeks ago, the Vietnamese American community in the United States was just so polarized and divided politically, because we're at this split in our generations now. You have very conservative elders with a new generation of Vietnamese Americans being raised in a much more culturally diverse atmosphere with much more diverse political leanings. Some go the way of the elders, some go a different way. But I've been wondering what's going to happen to us. What will our future look like as a community? Well, I'm very, very happy to see us united for once in support of these Afghan refugees, and united in becoming America's voice for hope. Reminding the world, because the world is watching. If you go on Twitter, if you go on just the news, like just even mainstream news, there's so many parallels about the Vietnam War and Afghanistan right now. And a lot of these articles are about South Vietnamese people speaking up and talking about how America was the destination of hope when everything was lost.
Yeah.
And how they want Afghans to experience that hope again.
And I've got to say, I heard yesterday from 101-year-old Mart Cohn, who we did a program with last month. She was an intelligence officer in the French army during World War II. She was a German or a French Jewish girl who lived under Nazi occupation. Her members of her family were taken to Auschwitz. She passed as a German nurse, infiltrated into Germany, and then reported back on what she saw there to the French resistance and then the French army. She emailed today expressing this kind of great sadness and heartache about the kinship that she feels with the people of Afghanistan and the disaster that's taking place there, because she was in that position before. She identifies completely with Vietnamese Americans. She was somebody who came to this country after the war. So it's just striking how the parallels are there, not just with Vietnam. I know Carol Popchalk put it in the comment here in Zoom, but modern war displaces populations, and this seems to be a universal quality to war. But man, to see it played out so catastrophically and so quickly over the past week is just devastating.
Hey, Todd, let me interrupt just a minute. My guest on your program in October is Jack Barsky. He is a former Soviet spy for the KGB. I talked to him tonight. I said, how you doing? He said, physically fine, mentally. I'm at a point in my life that I'm worried about America, because he was a communist KGB agent who came to this country like so many people have, and they have looked at America and said, wow, this is the best thing going. And I find it interesting that people who come here from other countries are so patriotic, and they know what we have to lose here. And we have Americans who were born here, and they don't realize what they got to lose. And I'll shut up. Okay.
Yep. Amen. So true. Terry Swank, you're an OEF, OIF. How are you, Terry? Good to see you, veteran. Do you care to share your thoughts?
Thanks, Todd. It's heartbreaking. So I served in Iraq 06-07 during the surge, and then Afghanistan 11-12 during the drawdown. And I was a PA in the military. So, we saw patients, and my heart goes out to those Gold Star families.
Yes.
Who have lost someone.
Yes.
Those who have been significantly injured. I'm kind of at a loss for words. What was it all for? The loss of life or the significant injuries, or, just putting a little tick mark on the wall to, do our time and, to just have no plan in place. Granted, okay, we've been there 20 years. Yeah, how long are we going to be there? And yeah, we need to come home, but there needed to be a plan in place for a proper handoff. And I'm saying what everybody knows. Yeah, it's it's like on one hand so many emotions, and on the other hand, it's that I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just heartbreaking for all those people that have helped us. I mean, even when we were there, if they knew someone was helping the Americans, they're dead meat. And their families, and yeah,
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Terry.
Thanks.
I hope you're doing well. Ben Wright, you have your hand up.
Yeah, there were several comments about how rapidly Afghanistan fell, and it certainly fell more quickly than did South Vietnam. But we were just blown away by the speed. The North Vietnamese came across the DMZ, and they were testing, to see if the Americans were going to respond or not. And then, I mean, it was like a blitzkrieg. I mean, it was amazing.
55 days. 55 days.
How fast they got, because I was flying missions in late March, getting stuff out of Vietnam that we didn't want the North Vietnamese to have. And then, there was the C-5 on the baby lift that crashed in the first week in April of 75. And then for 4 or 5 days there before it fell, we started this maximum effort airlift in C-130s to get refugees out. A lot of ARVN, a lot of friends of the U.S. And I mean, it was just amazing how quickly it happened. And then when the North Vietnamese were ready to shut it all down, they did.
Oh. We have
question.
Sean.
This question is for Hughes, John, Hugh, Kim. Something that was brought up last week. I remember it was mostly, if not all, Vietnam veterans last week as we were discussing this. But now that we have you on the call, it's this idea of thinking about your service and your time in Afghanistan. And do you feel that you personally made a difference while you were there? And it's kind of directed at all four, but if you want to chime in, please feel free.
Yes, because my difference is one man. His name is Murtaza Honorpour. He was my interpreter. And in 2016, when I was told I would be involuntarily separated from the Army, I just made it my mission to spend my last 6 months to get this guy, into America. So I contacted him on Facebook, said, "Hey, what's the status of your packet?" He says, "Oh, it's been stopped." So I went through the packet. I edited a bunch of things, wrote a new letter of recommendation, had him write a new letter, stating his case. And on my last day of work in the Army, he told me that he got approved for his special immigration visa. And I talked to him very recently, and he finally made it to the U.S. in December 2017. He has since brought to America the families of 10 other interpreters. That's my difference.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. Hugh, I would love to get his name, because on our podcast, The Scuttlebutt, this is something that I do want to cover, this topic, the special immigrant visa, and any Afghans who have come. If he would be interested in discussing that with us, I would love to have him on.
Sure, I'll reach out to him.
Please, thank you.
And Lisa Refner and Ben Wright put it in the chat. They're so interested in viewing your documentary, Hugh. What is the status of your documentary now? Do you have I know COVID has slowed things down. Do you have a release date targeted?
No, Afghanistan has slowed things down. We're going to film new segments now after what's happened in Afghanistan. I feel like we kind of owe it to story, because Afghanistan was really the beginning of my documentary. Working with the Afghans made me think about, well, where have we been before as an army? And it made me think about, that's what encouraged me to learn about the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. And so I've been studying that for the last 9 years or so. And then, I finally started this documentary, but we're near complete. We're about 80% there, 90% there, and hopefully it'll be released early next year.
I have the trailer, and
yeah.
we'll play the trailer here at the end of the program tonight as well.
Okay. Hughes, Turner.
Yeah, to answer the gentleman's question, whether or not I and others in my crew that went in initially, felt that we made a difference. Unquestionably, I think when we look at things from a very fundamental core mission aspect, we got bin Laden. We got bin Laden. And from my perspective, of course, it occurred after I left, but when I joined the National Counterterrorism Center to stand up a new group, and we tracked him and we got him the last week in May of 2011. I felt that I did what we had to do.
Yeah.
Quite bluntly.
Let me ask Curt, Rich, and other Vietnam veterans. Do you have any wisdom to share? John Worley has a little bit, I think. Any suggestions for our younger vets like Kim and Jennifer and Mac, Kelly and Hugh for kind of how to live with that question? What was this for? What was it all for? How do you go on? Bob Mizwa, how do you go on after, and I really hate to put it this way because it's such a loaded way to put it, but it's a simple way to put it. So forgive me for putting it this blatantly or this baldly and somewhat misleadingly. How do you go on after your side loses, in a sense?
Well, I don't know that we had any choice. I'd been home for 4.5 years. And of course, we were still being treated very badly. If you were looking for a job, the headhunters would tell you, don't put down that Vietnam thing. Don't put down the military. And said, whatever, I'm going to tell them that I was doing for the last 4 years. That sort of thing. But basically, as they, time heals all wounds, and I don't know about that because I still feel bad whenever this happens, but you just keep going.
Yeah.
And, we're designed to go forward and not backwards. Retreat is never good. The proper advice is that's on the face of a claymore that says front towards enemy. Because if you turn around, they shoot you. It's easier to shoot somebody who's running away. I never experienced that because the North Vietnamese didn't run away and we didn't run away. But all I can do is continue to go forward. I'm just as depressed in the morning when I turn the news on as I think the Afghan vets are.
Yeah.
Yesterday morning on Facebook, I said, I dreamed I was fighting the devil and I was losing. And then I woke up and turned on the news.
Right. You weren't dreaming.
Hughes?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can just, we'll all have an opportunity to reflect on a lot of things for years to come. But I remember working with some of the warlords, and this one comment, actually there are two comments that stood out to me. One of them made a comment, hey, you may have the watches, but we have the time.
Yeah.
The other one was the we be syndrome. You'll be gone, but we be still here.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk to the Brits, you can talk to the Russians. And as I recall, the only one that was probably quasi-successful in Afghanistan was Alexander the Great 2,500 years ago. And he co-opted by leaving 1/4 of his force there that wound up intermarrying with him. So I think, this is probably instructive for us to be mindful that hubris can get you in trouble.
Absolutely.
Yep. Wonderfully put, Hughes. We tried to get Alexander the Great on the program. He was hard to get. Bob Mizwa.
Oh, he's rough. He's tough.
Bob Mizwa.
Todd, like my experience in Vietnam, my armor unit, we kicked ass. We didn't take names. We never took a single prisoner. We killed every North Vietnamese soldier we encountered. My battalion brushed down on the Laotian border. We busted through the NVA lines, rescued an RD battery that was completely encircled. Then we killed them. Simple as that. We accomplished the mission. And I could keep going on and on about the other missions. And so I felt satisfied. And one thing I learned in Vietnam, it wasn't me, First Lieutenant Mizwa, it was we, 3rd Platoon, Charlie Company, 1st of the 77th Armor. That's my trophy, not the Super Bowl trophy, the Stanley Cup. It's not me, it was we. We got the mission done. We didn't lose the war in Vietnam. The damn Congress did. And then, my experience, like when I served in Iraq, I had one experience with an Iraqi. And after that, I'll never forget, it was towards the end of my tour in 2004. And I said, we need to get out of here. We need to get out of Afghanistan. And I have been on that soapbox since 2005. And I completely agree with former President Trump and Biden, get out. And if you've been reading Dan Simpson, the retired ambassador to several countries, and his editorials in a Post-Gazette for how many years, get out of the Middle East. We don't understand the Muslim Arab culture, and we don't know how to deal with it. It's as simple as that. And when you don't understand, you're in big trouble. Enough said. I'm going to get off my soapbox now.
Can I jump back in?
Sure.
I read General Giap's book, and he said that they would wait us out. And if his generation didn't win, maybe his children's generation or their children would win. They were going to keep fighting. Now, at that point, I was already home, and I said, there's no way we're going to beat these guys. And I was right. Now, I have to break to the other direction and say, the hardest thing to do that I found was taking prisoners, because I had a colonel that wanted prisoners. And every time we'd get where I thought I got a prisoner, one of the ARVNs would shoot him. We wound up with 3 live prisoners, and one of them told us where that arms cache was. So it was a very valuable prisoner. And I remember that whenever somebody talks about, I talked to a lot of GIs that were never taken prisoners. Neither did the ARVNs. They didn't want to take them, and the other guys didn't want to be prisoners. And I had read a report from the 2 pilots that had gotten out of the Hanoi Hilton by early release, and they described the torture in the Hanoi Hilton. And whenever the intel officer that gave it to me, I gave it back after I'd read it. He said, well, what do you think? I said, I don't think I'm going to be taken prisoner. Not if I'm conscious. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody feels that way. So it's really tough to take prisoners.
Yeah. How interesting. Mark Spiridigliosi, I see your hand is up.
Hey, Todd, how are you tonight?
Good.
Another great program. And I really am moved by everything that you guys have said and done here tonight. The original question was, what is the advice that the old guys from Vietnam have to those people from Afghanistan? You need to, especially the young women and men coming out of Afghanistan now, watching all of the horrible stuff that's happening there, that feeling of loss as you walk away from it, is make sure that you talk to somebody about it. Make sure that you reach out to your spouse, your parent, your loved one, your pastor, or somebody, and get what may be riding on your chest off of your chest and talk about it. Because if you bottle that up, Todd, you're never going to be the same.
Yeah. Yep. Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that advice. And I'm looking at Jack Watson. He was an Iwo Jima Marine. He served in the worst possible combat you could imagine on Iwo Jima. His side won. And yet, I mean, he would tell you it's been a rough 75 years since 1945. And Jack, I'll invite you if you want to make a comment on that. Feel free. What else do we have here? John Worley. And then I want to go to, John and then Larry. And then I want to go to Connor Richie, who's back now.
Mark, I can't pronounce
Spiridigliosi.
Spiridigliosi. Easy name. Mark, your comment about encouraging vets to seek help. Yes, I completely agree with you 100%. Any vet that has been traumatized, the traumatization is going to be with you forever, because it's embedded in your subconscious and it's going to be with you and it's going to torment you forever. You do need assistance, and all you need to do is find somebody that understands what you've been through, which would be another veteran that has been through that, preferably a counselor or a minister, like Mark says. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing all my life. That's what I created. And I have a book that I don't know whether have I told you about my book that I wrote?
I know about it, but you could why don't you put a link to it here in the chat?
I don't know how to do that, but
okay,
anyway.
I'll do that because I do know how to do that.
Okay. I encourage people you have to look at your intrinsic design, because the design of your temperament is going to determine where your mind goes. And if you understand your mind and your temperament, then you can control your feelings and your emotions, because your feelings and your emotions are going to dictate where you go in your thinking patterns. And your thinking patterns will dictate your feelings and emotions. You can learn how to control your feelings and emotions because of how you think. If you control your stinking thinking, then you won't go into the depressive mode. You will stay away from depression. So you control yourself by how you think. And I can teach you how to do that. It's very simple. That's what I do.
And I'm going to steal that Hugh Pham's line here in the chat. Therapy is maintenance for your ultimate weapon, your mind. Got to keep it fit.
You got to protect it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Larry Kilmeyer, you had your hand up at one point.
Just real quick, I know that there's a lot of people out there that are history majors on this program, and I'm not sure which general, whether it was MacArthur or Eisenhower, but he talked about military machine and how it needs to sort of keep going. So World War II ended, and then we got involved in Vietnam, and then we have another 20-year period. Now we're Iraq. The question is, you know, we're going to have a peaceful time here for the next 10 or 20 years, and many of us won't be here, but our children and grandchildren will experience it. And the question is, the military might, and like I say, it's a famous saying by a famous general, to be cautious of this machine. And that machine's kind of run by Wall Street. When the stock market goes down, how do you get it back up? Have a war.
Military industrial complex. Yeah.
I'm not a history major. Somebody knows that quote, and it's going to happen again.
Eisenhower.
Okay, that's fine. But what I'm getting at, where's the next war? Are we going to go to Venezuela the next time? You know, we tried Southeast Asia, we tried the Middle East. Where do
we still have a war. We're still in Iraq, and I think it's also important to remember that we should forget about that right now. I think our biggest mistake when we got out of, well, after I came back from Afghanistan, I saw the army had already started training its troops on the next war. Hybrid threats was what the new enemy was going to be called. It had pretty much given up on fighting point. It no longer wanted to teach soldiers how to fight point because it didn't want to find a way how to do it anymore. It just gave up on Afghanistan. And we just got to remember that we're still in the fight right now in Iraq.
And, you know, this is a wonderful conversation. We're about an hour and 48 minutes into it. I know we have a lot more to say about this. It is true that, and just Hugh, as you said that, it just came to mind, just a dawning realization. Our country really hasn't been committed to these wars for at least 7 years. At least. I mean, there was the pivot at least 7 or 8 or maybe even 10 years ago. And so it's been a half-hearted effort in both Iraq and Afghanistan ever since. And so we'll be picking that up. But I want to end with going back to Connor Richie, who is our 16-year-old from Lafayette, Louisiana. And Connor has joins our programs all the time. And I'm so grateful for it because here he is listening to what you're all saying, you know, the youngest representative here in this meeting on the Zoom side.
Other than Henry.
Well, oh, Henry's with us. Is Henry
Yeah.
with us too? Okay. Well, Henry, he then is I think he's still 13 in Madison, Wisconsin. And what both Henry and Connor have been doing is interviewing, talking with veterans about their experiences, something that we with the Veterans Breakfast Club, of course, encourage people to do. And it is, as depressing as the news from Afghanistan is, it's inspiring to hear these young people, kind of absorbing the wisdom and the perspectives and the experiences of the people in this room. And one thing that Connor has been doing especially has been interviewing really interesting World War II veterans about their service. Connor, you've done maybe 20 of these interviews so far?
Correct, 20. 20.
And we're going to do a special show with Connor and Henry on September 6th, Labor Day is going to be our Labor Day show, where they're going to share with us why they do what they do, why they're so engaged with veterans, and the interviews that they've conducted, the veterans they've gotten to know. Connor, you've gotten to know 20 World War II veterans very well, talked to them multiple times over the phone, really, really digging into their stories. One of those veterans was an airborne, at least one was an airborne veteran. And his name is Bradford Freeman. He is one of 2 last surviving members of the famous Easy Company of the 2nd Battalion, 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, the company made famous by the HBO series Band of Brothers. And in fact, here is the actor who played Bradford Freeman in Band of Brothers. But Freeman was a real paratrooper. And Connor, can you share us a little bit of his story, since we did focus so much on Airborne tonight?
Sure I can, Miss Todd. He's told me a lot of vivid, great stories. I mean, matter of fact, quite interesting. He was born in Mississippi, RTC, Mississippi, 1924, and as a matter of fact, one of his brothers was also a paratrooper, just like he was, but his brother Kerry transferred to the Pacific with the 11th Airborne Division in Leyte, Philippines, and he didn't actually join with Camp Tacoma like Captain Sobel did. That's why he didn't know Sobel,
right?
But they were having lots of issues with Sobel. But anyways, he actually was drafted. He didn't actually get to finish college actually at Mississippi State. So he had to work his way with the 541st, which was a training parachute unit. And let's see, what was he was a mortar man with Donald Malarkey all the way. And there are some men that he had highly respect for. Dick Winters was one of them. He and him became very, very close friends until Dick Winters finally passed away. And then one of his memories in Bastogne is that he saw Wild Bill, who was named Sergeant Garnier. Yeah. And he actually lost his leg trying to save another soldier by the name of Toy. And he didn't actually, and he brought Garnier and Toy back to one of the church depots there. And Toy was lucky he got an artificial leg, but Garnier did not get an artificial leg. So he spent the rest of his life in crutches instead of going to artificial leg. But the one funny story is he told Colonel Hester that he could not swim. They could not swim. And Colonel Hester said, no, Mississippi boy couldn't swim. And he said, neither can you. And he was showing him this swimming paddle trick that he did in the military. And he was told, well, I think you should tell the men about that trick. Tell them all about it. Yeah.
And you talk to him over the phone, huh? And just have these long conversations with him, asking him about his life and service.
Yes, I spent a very, very long time with this man. I mean, he has served with so many famous people like Babe Heffron, Moose Heiliger, Shifty Powers, numerous amount of soldiers there.
All those people made famous by HBO Band of Brothers series. Yeah, in the book, of course.
And Garnier was called Wild Bill because he found out that his oldest brother was killed in Italy, in Monte Cassino. And that's what made him kill so many Germans in that war. He says, I'm going wild and you're going to call me Wild Bill from then on. And he was Wild Bill from then on.
Connor, can I ask you what draws you to these veterans, these men? Why, as a 16-year-old kid who should be out doing other things, are you interested in talking to these old guys and their stories from the past?
Well, I think what people need to realize is that they're not going to live forever. That's the important part. And never, ever forget these men. I mean, they saw so much hell so that we could have the freedom that we enjoy today. It's not much to ask to actually just learn from them. I mean, I'm a great-grandson of a World War II veteran. I'm a great-grandnephew of 4 World War II veterans. And so I'm very, very patriotic. And it's really important for people to just not just spend the rest of their lives playing video games. I'm good at this, good at that, good at that. Just talk to these guys while they're still with us. Because soon, 10 to 20 years, they're probably going to be any World War II veterans anymore. And I think it's really, really important to better take an interest in this history. Like these men said in this program today, I got so many reasons why I draw my attention, but really draw my attention is I come from a patriotic military family. I mean, time is short, you know. So
yeah.
And for them to not understand that is just terrible. And that's what make these guys so frail today, that they feel like that younger people just don't really care. And I will not argue with that. A lot of people can't not really tell when World War II is, or where Pearl Harbor is, or when Bastogne was. And that's very, very horrible. And it's very disappointing and very sad. Very sad indeed.
Terry, you say here in the comment that Connor is wise beyond his years. I completely agree. I'd wish that I had your kind of insight at age 16. Unfortunately, I didn't. But now at age 55, I know a thing or two. I want Tony, you have something to say, and then Henry Shepke. Tony.
Could you please ask that young man if he can go back and show that picture of that GI, that airborne soldier?
You bet. I'll do that right now. We have this. This is Bradford Freeman today holding an M1 Garand, and there
you go, right there. And again, now I served in the early 60s. And if you see the insignia on the garrison cap, that was the glider insignia. And if you were an officer, you wore that insignia on one side of your hat. If you're an enlisted man, you wore it on the other side of your hat.
I didn't know that.
Right.
Huh. I didn't know that. Henry Shepke.
I just wanted to say, speaking on what Connor was saying, 2 weekends ago, I went to Kansas City, and I went to the World War I Museum, and I was in a gift shop, and there's these adults, and they were asking, is Pearl Harbor World War I or World War II?
No.
And they were at a World War I museum. So it's just sad, the lack of knowledge of history that people have these days.
Please tell me, Henry, that you set them straight.
Yeah.
No, I wish I did, but I didn't.
Would you love to picture Henry like cornering them and saying, listen, I'll give you the history right now.
Yep.
Connor.
Yeah, I have very, very something to say about this. I mean, one of my classmates from PE, when I was a sophomore in high school, I'm a junior now, and he thinks that my great grandfather was a racist. Well, what the hell? What the hell? I mean, Pearl Harbor was not World War I, first of all. It started December 7, 1941, period. And history is not wrong. History is actually right. Yeah. And I confronted this man who assumed that my great grandfather was racist. Well, hell, they were forced to kill Germans for a reason, because it was war. I mean, my great grandfather served as a pilot. So how is he a racist? I just don't understand. It's the lack of knowledge and oh my gosh.
I'm just laughing at because it's just like you're bringing coals to Newcastle here, guys. I mean, you're bringing such a wonderful gift to the people who are on this program, and it's just so much fun to have to engage these issues with you. And I love to hear your interest and your understanding of how important history is. I'm looking at the clock. We're coming on 9 o'clock. We're going to end the program now. Sean, did you have any final thoughts?
Well, I have the new trailer for Saigon's War, Hugh's documentary. I'd love to play that.
Let's do that.
And then we can
Sure,
have go ahead, Hugh, if you'd like to set us up.
So just a quick warning, there's some archival footage that's pretty graphic. I know a lot of people have seen it enough. If you have, just close your eyes, listen to the words. You don't need to see it, but it's there. So this is the new trailer. The voice you'll hear from the narrator is Jessica Connell, not a veteran. I thought it was great to bring a fresh voice to a documentary like this, something that people typically wouldn't expect. You'll hear from one veteran in this clip. You'll also hear from Jay Veith, who is an author, also a veteran, and then a very, very great author of multiple books on the Vietnam War from the South Vietnamese perspective. New book just came out called Cross Swords Over Distant Land. And then you'll also hear from Dennis Kim, who is a Korean-American advisor, who was a Korean-American advisor to the ARVN's Ranger units. Anyway, thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you so much for playing this new trailer. And great thanks to my my editor and co-producer, Jessica, for putting this trailer together for us.
All right, I'll start it. If you don't hear the sound, please let me know.
Okay.
Bring up the Vietnam War in the United States, and some iconic images come to mind.
They should be tried in front of a court and probably executed for what they did.
We're familiar with the American soldiers in the Vietnam War. We hear of their struggles through the harsh jungle, never knowing whether or not they're about to be ambushed by the Viet Cong. We know their stories of being captured and tortured by the North Vietnamese in POW camps.
That the only rational way out then will be to negotiate, not as victors, but as an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy and did the best they could.
But there are a group of men often overlooked when telling the story of the Vietnam War. They fought alongside us. They were ambushed by the Viet Cong with us. They were captured and tortured with us. And when Saigon fell, their homeland ceased to exist.
The South Vietnamese officers and enlisted men need to tell their stories, because if they don't do that, and then when they die, that history is lost forever. And once that history is lost forever, then the communists will have truly won the war.
How you feel if you a soldier and now you are stateless and you do not know your future?
When Saigon fell, I was fucking pissed because of Congress's inaction to keep a promise that we made.
These are the stories of the soldiers of South Vietnam.
That's a good trailer, Hugh. Well done.
Thank you. Actually, a lot of that credit for that one just goes to Jessica. She wrote a lot of that, a lot of that dialogue. and it's great to have her on board. She's really forced me to really be uncompromising on this project.
That's it.
One question and follow up to this, and something he said about the ARVN vets. Do you feel that there will be Afghan vets that are going to have to be here and tell their story?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
People ask me, you know, what my next film will be, if I'll ever do more documentaries. I would love to go to something more dramatic and creative. I would only do 2 more documentaries. A documentary from the Afghan perspective or a documentary from the Iraqi perspective.
Isn't that great? That's terrific. Boy, Hugh, I would love to have you on again. I look forward to having you on again. We will. I want to thank Kim DeFiori. I want to thank Cal for joining us. Thank you very much, Cal, for joining us, and all of you for kind of sharing your experiences, your thoughts, your feelings at this time. And I hope we'll see some of you tomorrow night for the Battle of Guadalcanal. And so all of you enjoy this warm, at least here in Pittsburgh, Monday night in August. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Tony, also, Tony Pursuti.